From New York One News, New York City's only all-news channel, in association with the New York Times, this is New York Close-Up.
I'm Sam Roberts of the New York Times, and welcome to New York Close-Up. Tonight, a look at the various approaches to teaching the city's foreign-born school children. My New York Times colleagues, Lynette Holloway and Mireya Navarro, who've been reporting on bilingual education in the public schools, explain in just a moment. And later in the program, we'll be joined by the writer Dorothy Gallagher, her book, How I Came Into My Inheritance and Other True Stories. But first, bilingual education. Last week, the Board of Education voted unanimously to revamp existing programs. That vote doesn't end the controversy over what are the most effective ways to teach English to children who need that kind of help. My New York Times colleagues, Lynette Holloway and Mireya Navarro, have been writing about the issues confronting both parents and children and teachers in the programs available to them in the public schools. Those stories appeared in the Times on the eve of the Board of Education's vote. Lynette, you wrote in the paper that there seems to be a great deal of inconsistency district by district and school by school, in fact, over what is offered, even what parents are seeking.
Yes. Sometimes some school administrators offer bilingual education programs and ESL programs.
ESL,
or
English as a second language.
Right, ESL is English as a second language. And it really depends on what the parents decide they want their, which program they want their child to be taught in. And also it depends on what the, how many teachers the school has.
The program that exists now was instituted pretty much as a reform originally itself. About 25 years ago, the city signed a consent decree saying that it was going to do a better job, in effect, of teaching students who did not speak English and merging them into the school system. What's wrong with the system as it now stands?
The inconsistencies in the way it's taught in the various districts, and sometimes they're about half and half, and half the students in the city are in ESL and half the students are in bilingual education. And some critics say that, like Mayor Giuliani, say that children are not learning English in bilingual education, and they are not leaving these programs, bilingual education programs. They're not leaving.
Mireya Navarro, your story suggested that one size does not fit all. In fact, that a lot of parents have different goals, different aspirations for their children, and that includes how well they learn English and how quickly they abandon or perhaps forget the language they came here with or their parents came here with. What do parents want from the public school system?
I think it varies, and the parents that want their children to learn English as quickly as possible really shun the programs. The parents that feel, who feel that bilingualism is a good thing and that the schools could teach the kids their native language even better than they could learn it at home, tend to favor them. I mean, I found that a lot of parents really who favor bilingual programs are not as much interested in having the kid, is the transition, to English for the children. I mean, they're really interested in maintaining the native language because it is a different world now, and they feel, especially with the Spanish speakers, that, this country is going to be at some point 25% Hispanic. There's a certain comfort level among the Hispanic parents with Spanish and speaking Spanish that you may not find among other ethnic groups. So sometimes, you were
saying in the story that Russian Jews, for instance, aren't that interested in educating their children in Russian. They prefer them to learn English.
Right.
As
Although,
quickly as
frankly, we cannot generalize. I think you find all views within the different ethnic groups. But in some districts, administrators with the school system say that the parents, overwhelmingly reject the bilingual programs. And I think a big concern is that they feel the kids could be held back if they're segregated in bilingual, classrooms.
Do we have any sense as to how the education establishment as well as parents responds to this challenge now compared to a century ago or the beginning of the 20th century when we had so many newcomers in the public school system as well, people who came from other countries or their parents came from other countries and spoke only Italian or only Russian or Ukrainian or Yiddish or German or some other language. How were they brought into the system?
I think it was the sink or swim kind of method. And I think that's what some of the critics say now. Well, my grandparents learned and without any help. Why can't kids today learn?
And what's the answer?
Well, they say that most of the people, the proponents say, we are more sophisticated today. We should be able to help our children, and we do have the means, and we should be able to provide our children with help. And that's why bilingual education was established. And children back in the 70s, mostly Hispanic children here in the city, were sitting in classrooms not learning anything. And that's why the consent decree came about. That's how it came about. And that was the criticism.
I think it's also a matter of attitude. I mean, the earlier immigrants may have come here and totally forgotten about their native countries. I mean, they wanted to build their future here. And they were, you know, for the most part coming from countries that were very far away. Now the new immigrants come from countries that are very close to the United States. You know, you have better transportation. They come back and forth. There are ties to the native country that these earlier immigrants may not have had. And I think that plays a role.
We hear a lot about what educators think, what parents think. What about the kids themselves? Are they mostly interested in getting to speak English and learn in English as quickly as possible, or do they have an attachment to the language they came here with or the language of their parents as well?
I think, you know, you have a variety of views too. I mean, I think, you know, one factor that is very important is age. Because for the older kids, you know, they have to pass state exams and city exams, and those are offered in their native languages. So if you come to this country at, you know, 16, I mean, you know, and you have to pass these exams, your concern, your priority is to learn content, you know, in your native language so that you can then pass the exams. I mean, you know, when you're talking about kindergartners, I mean, it's really, I mean, they absorb everything. It's much easier. It's a different ballgame.
I actually talked to a teacher the other day who said that in middle school, some of the children are afraid of leaving their friends behind in bilingual education, and they will actually flunk the test that determines proficiency in English deliberately to stay with their friends. So that's one of the things that we have to consider.
Lynette Holloway, Mireya Navarro of the New York Times. We'll be right back after the following messages.